There is a part of you that is never fit, not in the family you were born into, not in the world that shaped you, not in the version of yourself you were told to become. You have carried that feeling for years, maybe your entire life, without knowing what it meant. Jesus knew. He did not simply teach about God from a distance. He spoke of a living source, a single, indivisible origin that every human soul carries hidden inside them like a sealed fire. In the ancient Aramaic tradition, this origin has a name. It is not a metaphor. It is not a symbol. It is a frequency, a living reality that the architects of the visible world did not want you to remember. The word is Ikadaya, and what Jesus encoded inside it will not only answer why you never belonged here, it will restore the only identity that was ever truly yours. Stay with me. What you are about to receive was not meant for everyone, but it found you today. The world that was built to make you forget. From the moment you arrived in this world, a process began. It was not violent. It was quiet. It happened through names, roles, expectations, and mirrors. Someone looked at you and told you who you were, and slowly, you began to believe them. Jesus called this process by its true name. In the Gnostic traditions preserved around his original Aramaic teachings, he described a layer of reality constructed not by divine intention, but by what the ancients called the archons, architects of limitation, whose entire purpose was to keep the divine spark within you. This is not mythology for its own sake. It is a precise description of a lived experience you already know. Think of the moments in your life when you felt most yourself, not the self that performs, not the self that apologizes, not the self that shrinks to fit the room. The self that simply knows, that moment of stillness, that unexplained certainty, that sense of recognition so deep it has no words. That is not coincidence. That is the monad. Remembering itself, the monad, in the Aramaic and Gnostic transmission Jesus inhabited, is not an abstract philosophical concept. It is the undivided, unrepeatable living light that preceded your body, your name, your history, and even your thoughts. It is what Jesus pointed to when he said, "I am before Abraham was." He was not speaking of reincarnation. He was speaking of a dimension of self that time cannot reach. The world taught you that you are what you do, what you hear, what others think of you, what you manage to hold together on your worst days. Jesus taught the opposite. He taught that beneath all of that, under every layer of performance and pain, there is something that was never damaged, something that was never born, and therefore cannot die, something that belongs to no place on this earth, because it originates from before the earth existed. You did not feel out of place here because something is wrong with you. You felt out of place here because something in you is still awake. What Ikadaya really means, the name Jesus used for your true self, the Aramaic word. Ikadaya appears in texts directly connected to the teaching lineage of Jesus, and it carries a meaning that no single English word can fully hold. It is most often translated as the solitary one or the unified one, but that translation barely touches the surface. Ikadaya means the one who is undivided within, the one whose inner and outer reality are perfectly aligned, not because the world cooperated, but because the original self was never split. In the context of JESUS's teaching, Ikadaya was not a title reserved for the spiritually advanced. It was a description of what every human being already is at their deepest layer. It was a reminder, a return instruction encoded in a single word. When Jesus spoke of becoming like children to enter the kingdom, he was pointing to this. Children, before the world shapes them, have not yet learned to be divided. They do not yet know how to perform one version of themselves in public and hide another in private. That original wholeness is the archonic systems, the social, institutional, and psychological structures that enforce forgetting, cannot survive in the presence of Ikadaya, because Ikadaya does not negotiate. It does not comply. It does not adapt itself into something smaller to be accepted. And here is what is extraordinary about this word. It is not describing a state you need to reach. It is describing a state you need to remember. The distance between who you are right now and the fullness of Ikadaya is not a mountain to climb. It is a veil to dissolve. The teaching of Jesus was never about earning your way to God. It was about recognizing that the separation you feel was constructed, and that what was constructed can be seen through. The words of Jesus in Aramaic open different pathways back to divine alignment. Each one represents a frequency capable of restoring something fragmented in human consciousness. Understanding these frequencies is the first step, but mastering their vibration in your daily life is where the true miracle happens. Aramaic words carry a sound dimension that is deeply vibrational, and some of these pronunciations may reach your ear slightly differently depending on how they are rendered. To help you embody each frequency with precision, I created a collection of 5 sacred study guides, each one dedicated to a specific Aramaic declaration and its practice. Inside, you'll find the correct pronunciation, guided meditations, and daily activation rituals. The link is pinned in the comments. Your deeper transformation begins there. The archons and the architecture of forgetting to understand why Ikadaya matters. You must understand what it is working against. The Gnostic tradition that preserved many of Jesus's most radical teachings described the archons not as demons in a supernatural sense, but as systemic forces, patterns of consciousness that perpetuate separation, fear, and identification with the constructed self. They operate through perfectly ordinary channels, through the voice that tells you that you are not enough, through the culture that measures your worth by your productivity, through the religion that places God so far above you that the distance becomes the point that makes you feel small on purpose so that you will keep returning to an external authority for permission to exist. Jesus was not simply offering a new theology. He was dismantling a system. When he healed the blind man and said, "Your faith has made you whole," he was not describing a miracle from the outside. He was pointing to the internal authority of Ikadaya. The wholeness was already there. The healing was a remembering when he told his disciples that the kingdom of God is within you. He was making a claim so radical that the institutional forces of his time had to silence him, because if the kingdom is within, if the source is already present in every human being, then no external structure holds the keys. No priest, no temple, no system of merit or punishment. The archonic pattern does not attack the body first. It attacks the identity. It convinces the soul that it is small, foreign, guilty, incomplete. It replaces the memory of Ikadaya with a performance, a version of self built from approval, fear, and survival. And then it offers you solutions to the very problem it created. Jesus refused this entire architecture. He spoke directly to the Ikadaya in the people around him. He treated them not as broken sinners needing correction, but as sleeping lights needing a word. A frequency to wake up. That frequency is still available. If something in you is shifting as you receive this teaching, trust that movement. It is your original nature recognizing itself. The 5 sacred study guides were designed to walk beside you as that remembrance deepens, layer by layer, word by word, frequency by frequency. Each guide carries the full context of these sacred declarations, their sound, their meaning, and their power to dissolve what no longer belongs to you. The link is pinned in the comments. Your return to wholeness has a next step. The monad, the living source Jesus pointed to. The word monad comes from the Greek monos, the one, the indivisible. But in the tradition of Jesus, this concept was not imported from Greek philosophy. It was lived. It was spoken. It was transmitted through touch, through word, through the silent recognition between teacher and student. The monad, in the transmission Jesus carried, is the living source from which every soul originates. It is not a concept about God placed far above the cosmos. It is the immediate, present, indwelling reality of divine intelligence, more intimate than your breath, more constant than your heartbeat. In some of the most ancient Gnostic texts connected to Jesus and his immediate circle, the monad is described in extraordinary detail. It is called the Invisible One, the perfect light, the silence before creation that does not become less when creation begins. It is described as unbegotten, meaning it had no origin, because it is the origin itself. And here is the transmission that changes everything. Jesus did not describe the monad as something you approach from the outside. He described it as what you already are at the level of deepest truth. The soul is not a fragment traveling toward the monad. The soul is the monad, temporarily veiled by layers of constructed experience. This is why Ikadaya is the key. The undivided one is not a saint or a mystic in a cave. The undivided one is the soul that has seen through the veil, not escaped the world, but ceased to be deceived by it. Jesus did not come to extract people from the world. He came to show people that the world the archons built has no final authority over what they truly are. The monad cannot be diminished. It cannot be corrupted. It cannot be lost. It can only be forgotten. And forgetting is not permanent. That is the entire teaching. That is the arc of every healing Jesus performed. Every one of them was a demonstration that the original state whole, radiant, free, is closer to you right now than anything the world ever placed between you and it. The monad is not waiting for you somewhere else. It is waiting inside the next moment of total stillness that you allow yourself while you were born feeling like a stranger. And what that means. There is a pattern that appears in the lives of people who are drawn to teachings like this one. It is the pattern of the stranger, the one who looked around at the world from an early age and felt an unexplainable mismatch, the one who loved deeply but could not fully arrive, the one who achieved and yet stood at the peak of achievement, feeling that something essential was still missing. This is not a pathology. This is a signal. In the tradition of Jesus, the soul that feels foreign to the world is not the wounded soul. It is the awake soul, the one in whom Ikadaya is still alive enough to resist total assimilation into the constructed reality. The Gnostic term for this is the pneumatic from pneuma, spirit. The pneumatic soul is one that carries an excess of original light, more than the archonic systems can successfully contain. This soul will always feel the edges of the cage. It will always sense that there is something more. It will always be drawn toward depth, toward truth, toward the frequency of what is real beneath what is performed. Jesus spoke directly to these souls, not to the comfortable, not to those who had made peace with the surface of things. He spoke to the ones who were already awake enough to feel the wrongness of the forgetting and hungry enough to want the remembering. When he said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God," he was not describing moral purity. He was describing the soul that has not allowed its original sight to be fully replaced by the archonic lens. The pure heart is the heart that still recognizes the frequency of Ikadaya when it hears it. You are here because that recognition is still alive in you. The feeling of not belonging was never evidence of your brokenness. It was evidence of your awareness. The monad does not belong to this world, and the part of you that is made of monad never could. That is not a wound, that is a map. Before I close, I want to give you something that very few have received. Transformation Protocol. The Ikadaya practice, returning to the undivided self. What Jesus gave was not only a teaching, it was a practice, a way of inhabiting the body while remaining in contact with the source. The word Ikadaya is your instrument. How to pronounce it? Say it slowly, ih-he-da-ya. Let each syllable land without rushing. The second syllable, h-e-e, is where the breath carries the most resonance. Allow it to vibrate softly in your chest, not just in your throat. When to use it, use Ikadaya in the moments when you feel most divided. When the noise of the world has pulled you into the performing self and you can no longer feel the ground of your own being, use it in the morning before the day writes its instructions on your mind. Use it at night when the silence opens and the constructed self grows quiet. Use it especially in the moments of confrontation when someone's judgment or your own fear begins to tell you who you are. Intention. Do not approach Ikadaya as a request. Approach it as a recognition. You are not asking the monad to arrive. You are declaring that it never left. Breathe in slowly. As you breathe out, say or think the word. Ikadaya, I am the undivided one, not as a wish. As a fact, repeat it 7 times. On the 7th repetition, remain in the silence that follows. Do not feel Italiano. The monad speaks in the space between your thoughts, not inside them. What Jesus taught about the effect, according to the transmission Jesus carried, the consistent return to Ikadaya does not produce a dramatic event. It produces a gradual clearing. The layers of constructed identity, the fear-based self, the performing self, the self built from others' expectations, begin to become transparent, not destroyed. Transparent, and through that transparency, the original light, the monad that was never dimmed, begins to move through your daily life with increasing clarity. Decisions simplify. Relationships clarify. The sense of displacement dissolves. Not because the world changes, but because you remember where you actually come from. You were never meant to belong here the way the world wanted you to. You were meant to carry the monad here. And let it be seen, did you feel something shift today? Did these words touch something deeper in you? If they did, leave the word awakening in the comments. That is your confirmation that the light within you is moving. And when the light moves, it needs a path. Discover our complete collection of 5 sacred study guides created to carry your transformation beyond this moment. The link is pinned in the comments. Your next step is waiting. Right now, before you close this video, come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week, we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours. We are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation.